In this video, I'm going to react to why America's enemies still fear the B-1 bomber. Hi guys, and welcome to another episode of Kabir Considers. This is the place where I react to music, media, sports, anime, anything related to popular culture. I'll watch it with an open mind and give you my 100% honest reaction to it. And if you could please hit that like button early, I'd really appreciate it. Now, this is going to be a fun video just because, you know, I'm someone who is interested, well, really interested in military tech, hardware, aircraft and things like that. But I will admit that my knowledge of it is still fairly limited. But the B-1, I believe, is, it's got to be coming up to 50 years old, I think, right? I believe it was it first developed in like the 70s or something like that? But it's still like a heavily used bomber, and it's so I think it's very efficient. It's very good at its job, hence why it's still used. But other than that, I don't really know any of the actual details to what actually makes this plane, you know, so effective, so efficient at doing its job. So yeah, when I was recommended this video, I knew I had to put it high on the list just because, you know, it's really gonna, like, this channel does a great job of, you know, painting a picture, really explaining the nitty-gritty details as to what makes certain planes, certain weapons good and effective at what they do. So let's go. This is gonna be me reacting to why America's enemies still fear the B-1 bomber. Let's do it.
The true reason why all of America's enemies should still fear the B-1 bomber.
All right. Man, look at that thing. For a plane that's 50 years old, just look at the aesthetics on it. It looks so modern and like futuristic still.
Huge, yet surprisingly sleek and agile, the U.S. Air Force's B-1 Lancer strategic bombers, popularly dubbed Bones for B-1, circles over battlefields in Syria and Afghanistan like angels of death, dispensing GPS-guided bombs from on high.
Man, you would hate to look up at the sky and see the silhouette of that thing. You probably wouldn't even see it, to be honest. Man.
Yet the B-1 started out as an overpriced nuclear bomber that was arguably obsolete by the time it entered service.
Wow.
Thus, a bomber designed to dodge Soviet surface-to-air missiles and interceptors found its niche battling ISIS insurgents. During the 1940s and 50s, the U.S. military sought to push its bombers to even higher altitudes and faster speeds to protect them from flak guns and fighter planes, pushing new performance envelopes with the pressurized B-29 and later the B-47 and B-52 Stratofortress strategic.
Good grief. Look at the amount of deployed weapons.
Jet bombers. But by the early 1960s, the shoot-down of high-flying U-2 spy planes over China and Russia by surface-to-air missiles made it clear that altitude no longer offered dependable protection.
Yeah, you need stealth, I imagine.
The Air Force tried developing the huge XB-70 Valkyrie bomber to sustain speeds over 3 times the speed of sound, but the Soviets countered with the Mach 3 capable MiG-25 Foxbat interceptor. The Pentagon gave up on the Valkyrie in 1962 and began investing more in ground and submarine-launched ballistic missiles to provide nuclear.
Look at the shot. Look at that shot. That is unbelievable. What is that, a torpedo? No, torpedoes stay underwater. Amazing shot.
Deterrence. This didn't sit well with the Air Force, which proposed a new low-altitude penetration doctrine in which supersonic bombers skimmed close to the ground at high speed using newfangled terrain following systems, making them very difficult to track with radar due to intervening terrain faced by ground-based radars and the ground clutter experienced by airborne radars scanning low-flying aircraft.
Right.
The Air Force at first adopted the supersonic F-111 Aardvark to perform this mission, but wanted a larger, longer-range workhorse.
Look at that.
The Nixon administration authorized development of a Northrop Rockwell B-1 design, which saw its first flight in 1974.
Yeah, so yeah, the 70s. So yeah, coming up to 50 years now. 50 years in 3 years. Amazing longevity.
The costly new bomber featured swing wings, which could sweep forward to a 15-degree angle to maximize lift during takeoff or landing, allowing the 44.5-meter-long plane to operate from shorter forward air bases. To minimize drag for supersonic flight, the wings could tuck inwards to a 67.5-degree angle. At high altitude, the 4 B-1A prototypes could achieve up to 2.2 times the speed of sound, assisted by 2 flexible vanes situated
That is a fast plane, boy.
under the nose that helped stabilize airflow. However, by the mid-1970s, the Pentagon was aware of the Soviet Union's development of new MiG-31 Foxhound interceptors equipped with Zaslon Doppler radars that could sift out ground clutter, making low-altitude penetration highly risky. Meanwhile, U.S. B-52s were receiving nuclear-tipped AGM-86 air-launched cruise missiles that could be launched from well beyond the range of Soviet air defenses. Advised that the air-launched cruise missiles were adequate and that the B-1's concept was outdated, President Jimmy Carter canceled the expensive B-1 in 1977, believing it more sensible to invest in the top-secret B-2 stealth bomber instead.
Man, this... I know, you guys already probably know what I'm going to say, but I'm going to say it anyway. Just look at this thing. Is it not the most aesthetically pleasing plane you've ever seen in your life? It looks like a bird from the side. It kind of looks a bit like a peregrine falcon, I think is the one I'm looking for. Just, it literally looks like a bird from the side profile here. Like the tail, head, beak. I imagine birds are heavily drawn upon for or they're a big source of inspiration in terms of how their bodies are shaped as they are flying or making like a downward swoop for the aerodynamics.
4 years later, a newly elected Reagan, who had blasted Carter for canceling the B-1, revived the bones with an order for 100 aircraft. This time, the Air Force sought a cheaper, revised B-1B model, which could fly further, 6,000 miles, with heavier payloads, but at a reduced high-altitude speed of Mach 1.2, 830 miles per hour, or Mach 0.95 at low altitude. This was because the aircraft's 4 F-101 afterburning turbofans nestled into the wing roots were no longer designed to swing back with the wings. There was no longer any pretense that the B-1 would outrun fighters and air defense missiles. Instead, the B-1B's aluminum and titanium skin surfaces were reshaped and coated with radar-absorbent materials to reduce radar cross-section to just 2.5 meters, roughly that of a small F-16 fighter.
Titanium, that must really hike up the cost of these aircraft, because titanium is a very, very difficult to source material. Yeah.
Though far from being a stealth plane, the B-1 would not be susceptible to detection and targeting at very long range like a B-52 would. The crew of 4 included a pilot, co-pilot, weapons officer, and a defensive systems officer who operated a suite including powerful radar jammers and oversized flares for decoying heat-seeking missiles. An APQ-164 passive electronically scanned array multi-mode radar designed for low probability of intercept could snoop out the positions of enemy fighters and radars, as well as scan the ground for specific targets.
Wow.
The B-1B had 3 internal bomb bays, allowing it to carry up to 24 B-61 or 1.2 megaton B-83 nuclear gravity bombs between them, each many times more powerful than the atomic bombs dropped on Japan.
Crazy, because I believe each of the bombs dropped on Japan, I feel like they caused something like, was it 60,000 plus fatalities each? And if these are many times more powerful and there are 24 of them on board, goodness me, just one of those planes could wreck a nation with its payload. One. Unless I've got my figures wrong.
Alternately, the B-1 could lug up to 84 Mark 82 500-pound gravity bombs, or the equivalent weight in larger bombs. A theoretical maximum bomb load of 125,000 pounds was never implemented operationally. The first one of 100 B-1Bs built were rushed into service in 1987 at the eye-watering price of $250 million each. However, the Lancer suffered a string of early mishaps, ranging from engine fires to the defensive countermeasures jamming the B-1's own radar.
At $250 million each, are they cheaper or more expensive than the F-22? I feel like they might be more expensive.
These kept the bomber out of action during the 1991 Gulf War. When the Soviet Union collapsed the same year, the nuclear bombers seemed to go with it. However, the Air Force upgraded the Bones with GPS and the ability to use the Joint Direct Attack Munition, JDAM precision-guided bombs, and tow ALE-50 decoys to divert hostile radar-guided missiles. Today, the B-1 can also mount up to 24 Joint Standoff Weapons, JSOWs, glide bombs or Joint Air-to-Surface Missiles, JASSM, with ranges measured in the dozens and hundreds of miles respectively.
Wow.
The B-1 remains well-liked by pilots for its unusual maneuverability and responsiveness for an aircraft of its size. As you can see in this video, in the early 2000s, Boeing even floated a concept for Mach 2 capable B-1R model using the F-119 turbofans or the F-22 Raptor and armed with air-to-air missiles.
It is very maneuverable for such a big plane. It's, you know, it looks to me like it's at least 2.5 times the size of a standard fighter jet, like an F-22, for example. Maybe even 3 times in terms of its length. Look at the way it's doing this barrel roll here. Really impressive.
However, the Bones fully came into its own during the U.S. campaign to overthrow the Afghan Taliban in 2001. Afghanistan was simply too far for the Pentagon's land-based fighters to fly without lots of aerial refueling. But B-1s based in the Indian Ocean out of Diego Garcia could fly over Afghan airspace and loiter overhead for hours at a time. The Bones brought to the table their huge payload and their ability to pickle dozens of inexpensive GPS-guided 2,000-pound JDAM bombs precisely onto targets designated by ground forces. The B-1 thus became a form of flying artillery orbiting overhead on call as ground troops ferreted out enemy positions and marked them for destruction.
Wow.
In 2008, B-1s were outfitted with Sniper XR targeting pods under their noses so they too could designate their own targets.
Man, the weapons on this plane. Woo! This thing is literally like a flying war machine. Literally, like so much weaponry on it.
Bones went on to deliver huge bomb loads in conflicts in Iraq, Libya, and Syria. For example, B-1s played an instrumental role in preventing the fall of the besieged Kurdish enclave in Kobane, Syria in 2014, dropping 660 bombs that killed an estimated 1,000 ISIS fighters.
Wow.
4 years later, Lancers were used to launch 19 JASSM cruise missiles as part of a punitive strike against Bashar al-Assad. As of 2017, 62 B-1s remain in service, with the 7th and 28th Bombardment Wings based in Texas and South Dakota respectively, though aircraft are often operationally deployed to Diego Garcia and Al Udeid Air Base in Qatar. Ironically, the B-1s are basically good at the same things the B-52 remains useful for, carrying lots of bombs and missiles over long distances and launching them at adversaries that can't shoot back. The Bone is faster than the B-52, can carry heavier payloads, has more modern avionics, and is less conspicuous on radar.
Just seems the more superior plane, I guess.
However, these advantages only marginally improve its survivability versus modern SAMs and fighters. Practically, the Air Force planners want to keep B-1s as far away from these threats as possible. The Air Force plans on retiring the B-1 bomber by 2036, while the B-52 is slated to remain active well into the 2040s and possibly beyond.
Wow.
While the B-1 is slightly cheaper to operate at $63,000 per flight hour, the B-1 reportedly is more difficult to maintain, 74 man-hours of maintenance for every flight hour, and thus suffers from low readiness rates of 50%. The B-52 comes out to 62 hours and 80% in these metrics. Therefore, the bone may be retired after a respectable half-century of service. Until then, the huge swing wing bombers will continue to receive upgrades and may yet again be adapted to fit the Pentagon's evolving warfighting needs, such as potentially hunting ships with long-range missiles.
It's a very impressive looking plane. Just awesome video. Love that channel. It's just the B1. It's just such a it's a really good looking plane, I have to say. Like, it completely ignoring all of the vast array of weapons on it. It just looks such a sleek, for something designed and conceived 50 years ago, coming up to. It's still, it doesn't look out of place next to, you know, much more modern fighter jets. Yeah, whoever designed it, hopefully they were, you know, rewarded for their efforts, because they did a tremendous job. Amazing plane. Thanks for watching, guys. If you enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe, turn on bell notifications, and keep throwing the recommendations my way. I know I say it all the time, but they genuinely help me out, because if I know you enjoyed watching something, I'll definitely enjoy reacting to it. So like, subscribe, turn on bell notifications, keep throwing the recommendations, and I'll catch you in the next one.